From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting. Originating from the County Administrative Center, located at 1115 Truxton Avenue in Bakersfield, California. Grounded in ideas, energy, and innovation, Kern County's vision is to be a driving force for the world's fifth largest economy. And our mission is to exceed expectations of the communities we serve, changing the way they feel about government, those who manage it, and the services it provides. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters. Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, July 26, 2022, 2 p.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We will first hear from Assistant County Counsel Kendra Graham for a report on actions taken in closed session. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This morning, your board met in closed session on item numbers 31 through 34 on the AM agenda, and there were no reportable actions taken.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now on to our agenda. We will begin by considering the consent agenda. Agendas are located in the tables near the doors in the rear for anyone wishing to follow along. All items listed with a CA above the item number are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So I'll read those consent agenda items now. Starting on page 2, items 3 and 4 are on consent. On page 3, items 5 through 7 are on consent. On page 4, all items 8 through 14 are on consent. On page 5, all items 15 through 23 are on consent. On page 6, all items 24 through 31 are on consent. And finally, on page 7, item 32 is on consent. So in other words, all the items on our agenda, with the exception of 1 and 2, are on consent. So I'll ask if any members of the audience have any comments or questions about any items on the consent agenda. I don't see any, so I'll return to the board for any questions, comments, or a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. 3 ayes, 2 absent. Supervisor Perez, Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. Now we return to page 2 of our agenda, item number 1, public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct the staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. So now I'll ask if there's any members of the audience who would like to make a public presentation. Please state your name and observe our 2-minute time limit. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Ralph Robles. I am a veteran. During the last 2 meetings of this board, I have brought you my concerns about our recent primary election. I listed these concerns and you referred them to Ms. Bedard, the current county clerk. I received her response, and sadly, I found it dismissive and uninformative. She seemed to find the election observers as intrusive and mentioned that she had to ask them to leave for not following the rules. What I'd like to know is if an observer needs to stand close enough to actually see the signatures on the ballot envelope, is that against the rules? Is standing close enough to see the votes on a ballot against the rules? While we're asking, is it true, correction, I was going to ask also, is election transparency an inconvenient obstruction? While we're asking, is it true that 176 dead persons voted in this last election? Were observers allowed to view all chain of custody documents? Were all portable memory devices, for example, memory sticks, controlled with a chain of custody documents? Were the observers allowed to view the logs of IP addresses that of any IP addresses that are accessed any and all of the Dominion routers. While searching the county's website, I saw the total number of votes counted. What I didn't see was the total number of ballots received. I did not see how many ballots failed the signature inspection or how many ballots were, quote unquote, cured. Ms. Bedard also mentioned that there were no determinations of the Dominion voting machines being compromised anywhere. In an internet search, I found at least 2 references to Dominion machines involved in significant ballot discrepancies. I also found at least 2 references to the Dominion company being owned by so-called cutouts that were in turn owned by communist Chinese entities. I again respectfully request that you authorize a forensic audit. I also request that you review your process for contracting election processing systems. It is unreasonable to have an automated system that takes longer to complete a ballot count than it would to do it by hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robles. Do we have any other public comments, please? Okay, seeing none then, we'll move on to board member announcements and reports. Have anything from my colleagues?
Yes, please.
Supervisor Couch.
We had a budget hearing last night and a lot of comments about one particular road, I guess, in the county road system now called San Jose Avenue. And I just wondered, I think, Mr. Alsop, we had asked you if you would ask Public Works to research the status of that, and if you could provide some comments on the status of the road construction that I think you've been working on for a while, and also the construction of homes along that road that may have been built without access to electricity and other utilities. Were there other questions that were brought up last night that need to be answered as well? If there were, please include those in my question. I remember those 2 distinctly. Thanks.
Okay. Supervisor Couch through the chair. Real quick, I brought Al Anon with me. He can speak to the building permits and construction on there. As far as the road San Jose goes, in June of 11th, 2019, when we did the project for Lytle Street, we accepted the right-of-way for Lytle, San Jose, and Casey. So those are now public rights-of-way. So the utility companies, I heard that they were having problems. They were saying they couldn't get easements from the property owners and all that to move their lines up. That's no longer required. They can go in under the franchise agreement, and so they do not need to contact their property owners or anything like that. They just have to pull an encroachment permit with the department to do that. Yes. And then, of course, any work that they do within those roads, they need to pull an encroachment permit as well, so that way we know what they're doing and can approve it, because we don't want to go in and build the road and they move fences into it and things like that. So as far as the utility goes, we talked with Southern California Edison. It's in their territory. And today, my office was able to determine that there's 2 options for them to get power up along that road. I believe the last power pole, when I was researching it this morning, stopped about 1,300 feet north of Cecil. So it's about halfway there. The way that you can do it with SCE now is you have two funding options. You can do a refund policy, which is where you would pay for everything all the way up to your house for it to be constructed. And then as people tied into that line, they would refund you that money for a certain period of time. Or you can do what they call the discount option, which is they'll come in and determine and say, okay, we're going to put this line up to your house. There's going to be X number of people that will eventually connect to it, so we're only going to charge you your proportionate share at that time, but then you don't get any other benefit from it. And that's really how, when we do our agreements with SCE and PG&E, that language is all in there when we do that. As far as the building permits go, I'll let Al get into a little more detail, but it's in that situation, it's not illegal for them to be connected to the SE. They don't have to be. They can be on solar, and they just have to have a solar system that can provide the power that they have for their house. And when we're checking and building, we're looking at the panel that's on the side of the house in the plans, which 100 amp panel, and then we calc back through to figure out to make sure that everything that's going into that panel is sufficient. So that way we could determine if we had to up the size of the panel or not. Anything else, I'll let Al kind of add to that there. That about as it concludes my comments. Do you have anything else, Al, to add?
No, unless they have questions.
Okay.
Well, I guess the only follow-up I would have is that I believe that one of the comments they made last night was often they did not have enough power supplied by the solar panels to get them through the day, especially in the wintertime. Summer didn't seem to be a problem, but what you're saying is you've looked at it prior to issuing the building permit, and you've deemed whatever they wanted to do there adequate, and maybe it's not adequate 100% of the time, but in your professional opinion, you don't issue somebody a building permit without looking at that particular part of it.
I'll have Al answer that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I did look at the plans, the approved set of plans that we issued, and they are under construction now. We have about 3. All those plans were prepared by a registered design professional, and there is a single line diagram. There is a note on the plans, the approved plans, that they would be connected to the grid, to the power system. So the solar, and they also have solar system shown on the plans, because it is a requirement per the current code. You've got to have solar regardless whether they are connected to the power or not. So when we approved the plans, we were under the assumption that they will be connected to the grid system. And on that basis, we approved it. Definitely, I mean, what they have right now, based on the plan, what they showed, the solar system does not handle the entire load of the house.
So what was submitted to you were plans that assumed a connection to the grid?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, gentlemen. Don't see any other requests for board member announcements or reports. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for this afternoon. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, August 9th at 9 a.m.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
A bit like smoke, and it also has a very warm appearance. When you look at storms that produce the really damaging tornadoes and large hail, you're taking very unstable air, hot and humid air near to the ground, and raising it up into the upper atmosphere very, very